Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Hovey and this is Brooke Corbin. We're both second years in Dr. Allen's lab. Today we'll be talking about the paper that we just published. It was a super exciting computational study on a couple of europium cryptates that we work with daily in the lab. We were just kind of analyzing some of the luminescence properties that we've observed with these two cryptates, one of them being nitrogen donors and the other one being oxygen donors. And the nitrogen donor cryptate actually exhibits bright yellow luminescence, and the oxygen donor cryptate only exhibits weak blue luminescence. So we looked to our computational studies. We had the class of Dr. Schlegel this semester. We looked to those to try to explain some of the electronic properties of those cryptates. So we were using TD-DFT studies with a solvation method in methanol, and we used B3PW91 functional to get all of our calculations. And the first thing that we aimed to do was to calculate the UV vis and the fluorescence spectra for those two compounds, and we successfully did that, and they matched pretty well with the experimental values. We have that in the paper.
Yeah, so a really cool thing I think about using the computational method along with the experimental, because we also reported some of the experimental data in methanol, was that we know from the experimental data, when you have that broad absorbance curve from a UV vis spectra, it's composed of a bunch of discrete transitions. So you don't get to see those discrete transitions when you do a UV vis to get the experimental absorbance. But when you simulate the absorbance spectra using computational methods, we can actually analyze all those discrete transitions, pick the ones that are the most involved in our complexes, transitions, and really analyze the orbitals involved, which we did. We have natural transition orbitals for the different ground state and the excited states. And we use that information to determine not only what orbitals are involved, but the different splitting energies. So we actually found out that for our europium complexes, the real underlying reason behind the interesting luminescence was actually a crystal field effect, which usually when you think of crystal field theory, you think of transition metals and D to D transitions and how different ligand environments affect the d orbital splitting. So it's still a d orbital splitting effect with the lanthanides, but because for the europium we were expecting an F to D transition, because it's divalent, we were expecting the F to D transition. The different D splitting based on the different ligands that Jessica described earlier is actually affecting the F to D transition because the F orbitals are degenerate. So we thought that was really interesting that all this work and all this study into the europium cryptates and determining what the luminescence was something that we read about in our textbooks, right? It's crystal field theory, such a big part of inorganic chemistry, and I think it's really interesting that it ended up that way.
Yeah, and we actually found as a result that there were a bigger splitting for the strong field amine donors. Yeah, so that resulted in the bright yellow luminescence. So that was our findings, and we were very excited to use that in our future research in the lab for all of these different cryptates that we'll be working with, and maybe even some different metals. You never know.
Another tool in the toolbox, yeah.
Yeah.